All right, the great
So,
Tony. Go ahead.
Green, if I can have another minute. So I took a look at the quarter four GDP print, coming in at 2.9 percent, and you know that looking at that and thinking about that it appears to be a solid annual growth rate. But once you start calculating inflation, essentially, I mean, and I'm spitballing here, and I like to, get challenged here a little bit. I can view that as a technical recession, just because CPI inflation is way over growth.
Thank
So
you.
so maybe this is exactly what the Fed wants. The Fed wants to control growth, real GDP growth, just enough so that they could try to engineer some kind of soft landing.
Yes, you're right. I wouldn't say it's a technical recession. I say it's a real recession or a layman's recession because technically you use that GDP number, but the GDP number isn't very good anymore in the way you describe it. So it's more like a real recession where things are getting more expensive. People are getting like really stuff is happening, but the GDP isn't really showing anything that valuable anymore.
Are we looking at nominal GDP? The real
No,
GDP has
no,
been
No,
they're
real
growing.
when they
GDP.
say it grew, they claim it's real. You need to be aware of that. But I would
Right.
tend to agree with you. It's probably closer to stagnant, but
It's a
that's because they
stagflation.
undermeasure inflation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a stagflation what it is. And real GDP, in my opinion, I don't know what definitions are out there, but it's been negative, real GDP. And the way these forecasts are now starting to appear gradually for what CPI may look like more bumpy this quarter, first quarter, than last quarter. We probably will see even more negative real
No, that's
GDP.
the argument that I've been leaning
Well, I
towards
think
is
that
that
I
it's going
think
to
that if they
be
can,
just stagflation, and I'm not entirely sure why, but if we see a recession, it won't be until 2024.
well, I think
By
that
recession, you're
if
talking
they can
about.
keep real, yeah, sorry, I think if the Fed can keep the GDP growth and CPI within 2 points, I think that maybe a soft landing is possible. But that would have to be sustained, over multiple quarters.
What does a soft landing mean? I honestly don't know.
I've actually been asking myself that too.
I
Yeah,
think it means no 3 quarters of negative growth.
oh, we got
Right.
What does transitory mean?
It
It's a
means nothing. We
landing with
retired that
Bullshit.
term, sir.
Yeah. And it's every one of these words too. Somebody said like Jerome used a certain word 34 times. Somebody said that earlier because that's what's running the economy is these big bullshit words. It's not really hard numbers and hard math. Go look through. He might say 2% and give a couple numbers out, but it's really just English terminology that we're bickering about. Yeah.
So one thing I want to say, and I've told Neely this privately, but the Federal Reserve has at least one PR agency, and they work heavily with them when they give all these messages. And why they say what they say is run past quite a few people to get reactions to it. So you should be aware of that. Like they're acutely aware of how narrative is understood, and they've frequently workshopped this with financial journalists and other people. So just be aware of that fact.
Hey, I'll go, even further. I think you're exactly 100% right. But that psychological manipulation is the vast, vast majority of the way that in the year 2023, the Federal Reserve has an effect on the economy. FFR, there's no fucking magic dial where you can speed up and slow down the economy. FFR pales in comparison to what you just described, which is the psychological games that they play. That's
Is it hasn't
real money.
wasn't it Bill Ackman that tweeted once a couple months ago when he said that the Fed has a real communication problem because it says something and it just simply doesn't resonate with the market, or the after Powell makes comments, the individual governors or board members have to come out enforcing it. Kind of like really pressing on it. I thought there was a tweet from Bill Ackman a couple of months ago. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, that's
So they-
part of their little narrative symphony. My favorite is when they came up with that leaker. That was quite it's almost like having an extra board member now that can come out and say something the others don't want to say.